going on, everybody? It's Richard Koberger here, the Blue Collar Nerd, and in this video, I'm going to be teaching you about spec-based estimate templates. So spec-based estimate templates are a type of estimate template slash proposal template. So if you're not already familiar with the proposal templates feature of ServiceTitan, I have a separate video on that, and I think it would be helpful contextual knowledge to help you understand this video. But basically, with regular proposal templates, you can save your technicians out in the field from having to manually build out estimates because you can pre-build them in the office, and then the technician out in the field can just select the template and it just auto-populates with a menu of estimates. So you build estimate templates. Let's say you're building a good, better, and best. You'll say, okay, my good looks like this, my better looks like this, and my best looks like that. And then you'll take all of those and put them inside of a proposal template so that they all just pre-populate when the technician selects it. But with regular proposal templates, when the technician does select that proposal template, what pre-populates is exactly what you built over in the office. They can manually make edits to it if they want to, but it's just going to be exactly what you built in the office. Now with spec-based templates, on the other hand, you link a form to the template, and then the items that are inside the estimates, those are dynamic based on how the questions on the form were answered. So it's not just like you create estimates on the office side and then those exact items pre-populate. What you're building on the office side is now like rules and formulas, and then the form is used to decide what's going to go inside of these estimates. So for example, you could have a form that collects a bunch of roofing measurements and then use that information to automatically calculate how many bundles of shingles you're going to need and how much underlayment that job would use, how many ridge caps and starter strips, and automatically apply your waste factor. Now that of course was a roofing example, and this feature was mainly built with roofing in mind, but other industries have found uses for it as well, which I'll get into later in the video. Okay, so let's take a quick look at how these are set up. So I will find spec-based estimate templates under Pricebook and Templates, and then assuming I have the feature enabled, one of my tabs will be spec-based templates. Now if you are in roofing, this feature should be auto-enabled for you. If you're not in roofing though, you can still have it, you just have to ask for it. And again, if you are in roofing, then during your onboarding, you'll have some spec-based templates by default set up for you. And you'll talk with a ServiceTitan employee during your onboarding to fine-tune that to exactly how you want it. Or if you're in roofing and you already onboarded before this feature came out, then you can talk to your CSM to have that set up. So for roofing customers, it's not actually necessary for you to set one of these up yourself unless you just want to do something super custom. Nonetheless, I'm still going to walk through the basics of what the setup process looks like. But instead of creating a new one from scratch, I'm just going to edit one that already exists. So I'm going to edit our sloped roofing and gutters here. So the first step is to select a form that's going to be tied to this template. You'll see here that some of these have a little locked icon next to them, and that just means that they're already tied to one or more spec-based estimate templates. Now this one that I'm working with here, sloped roofing and gutters, this is one of those defaults from ServiceTitan that would have been set up during my onboarding. And it is tied to this sloped roofing form, which also would have been set up during my onboarding. Or afterwards with my CSM if I had already onboarded. All right, and then the next step here is to select a measurement integration. So if you are in roofing, then you're probably already quite familiar with these, but basically these measurement integrations, these companies have data about roofs, about houses that you can use to just pre-populate information on your form so that somebody doesn't have to physically set up a ladder and get up on the roof to take all of those measurements manually. So if you already work with one of these supported measurement integrations, then you can set that up here. So if you click this setup button, it's actually going to open up a separate page in the settings under integrations and measurements. And from there you can configure one of these integrations. And you'll basically link your account, and then there's a mapping step. Now I don't actually have an account to tie in here, so I can't walk through this with you, but the account setup is going to hold your hand through it. It should be pretty simple. And then the mapping step is to map the fields from the measurement integration to fields in your form in case they're not named exactly the same. Right, so we happen to be using EagleView here. If EagleView has a data point called eaves and our form has a field called eve, we just need to make sure it understands that those are the same thing. Those map onto each other. Okay, so back to our setup page. Now again, I don't have a real account, so I can't check one of these off, but if I did, I would check it off and say next. Okay, and then we need to choose our proposal type. So the proposal type, if you're familiar with regular proposal templates, is just sort of your labeling of your menu items and how many menu items you're going to have. So a pretty common example is good, better, and best, but you could name them differently: basic, better, best, basic, premium, premium plus. You could have more than 3 options, you could have less than 3 options, you could even just have it populate a single option. And if what you want isn't already here, you can say add proposal type here to create a new one. I'm not going to get too deep into all of this and how this works because that's all explained in the proposal templates video. So again, if you're not already familiar with proposal templates, I recommend checking that video out. All right, next. Okay, and in this next step is where we need to populate all of the items that could potentially be on our estimates. I say could potentially be on our estimates because this, again, doesn't work quite like regular proposal templates where we just build it and then that's what you get. We're going to build it and then tie in formulas, and what happens is based on this formula and how that interacts with the form. So if we look at a particular formula here, you can see that we're using information from the form. So like values, for example, that number is going to come from the form. Waste factor, that number is going to come from the form. So it's just going to suck in all of that data from the form and apply it to these formulas. And that's how it's going to know how many, if any at all, of each item to apply to this particular estimate. And you can see in this example, we have quite a few things on here. So if we were asking our person out in the field to like manually build this out every time, that would be quite a lot of work. Plus, because we have all of these materials on here, the person out in the field would need to understand already how many of each thing come per box, per roll, per coil, per whatever. In order for them to know how much of everything to add in so that we get the right amount of materials, it just gets really messy. So with the spec-based estimate template, they don't need to deal with any of that. They just fill out the form. And then the system's going to do all of the building for them. Now in our example here, the proposal type that I chose was a good, better, and best, so we have 3 of these. If you are building one of these things from scratch on your own, don't worry, you don't have to like manually rebuild stuff every time. You can copy stuff over. So for example, if your better has mostly the same stuff with mostly the same formulas, but you just need to tweak a couple of items to be more premium items, you don't have to like start from scratch. You can just copy it right over from this icon right here. We can also click in to edit one of these formulas just to see what that would look like. So this is the formula builder. We've got our form fields over here that we can pull in. We also have a handy formula glossary, so we don't have to build all of our formulas from scratch. We can just pull something from the glossary. We've got a formula builder guide here at the bottom that kind of tells us how these formulas work, how they're formatted. Structurally anyways, they're similar to how formulas work in like spreadsheets, so like Excel or numbers. And then here on the side, we have a little area where we can test our formula to see what our results would look like. So we can just kind of play around there and see what sort of results we're getting. Just to make sure nothing's looking weird, our results are looking realistic the way we expect them. Now again, this stuff is going to be set up alongside a ServiceTitan employee during your onboarding, or after your onboarding. If you're already onboarded, you can talk to your CSM. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time like really diving into building specific formulas and stuff like that. The goal of this video is really just to help you understand how all of this pieces together and how it works. All right, so we'll say next here. And then our last step is just to review everything, make sure it looks good, and say save and publish. Okay, so now let's see what this looks like in action over on ServiceTitan Mobile. You can also use these from the office, by the way, but I figure most people are going to be building these out on the mobile side, so that's where I'm going to show it. So I'm going to come over to my forms tab here, and then there's all of my forms, and you'll notice that forms tied to spec-based estimate templates have that little tag that says generates estimate on completion. So I'm going to fill out that sloped roofing form. Now this form uses conditional logic, meaning that questions are going to populate and show themselves or hide themselves depending on how I answer these questions. So right now I only have one question asking me what services am I offering, so I'll check off sloped roof here. And now that I've done that, other questions have appeared. If you're not familiar with setting up conditional logic in forms, I've got a separate video about that as well. Okay, is a permit required? I'll say yes. And now for a lot of this other stuff, unfortunately, I didn't have a measurement integration to tie in, or else some of this stuff would be filled in for me. But unfortunately, I don't have that, so I'm gonna have to go in and make some stuff up, so give me 1 minute here. All right, I've got my form filled out. I'm gonna say complete. It's creating estimates for me. So I'm just gonna hang out here and wait for a minute, have a little protein. And I'm getting this message that it's taking a little bit longer, but the estimates are still being created in the background. That's fine. This is a pretty complicated form with lots of materials and stuff that could be added to this, so I'm gonna give it a second. But once they're ready, I should see them here under estimates. And there they are. So I would say total that took less than 30 seconds, maybe like 25 seconds. So not too bad at all. I can see that little link icon there that says that this is coming from that sloped roofing template. And let's just tap into the good there and see what we've got. And here's all of our stuff. So we've got an item group with 11 sub items there. I'll collapse that. We've got 8 services automatically added, all with the correct quantity based on what I said on my form. And all of the materials that we're going to need and a total price. And then I've got separate options automatically built out for my better and best. Cool, so that's the basics of it. Now at the beginning of this video, I did say that other industries besides roofing were finding uses for this as well. So let's dive a little bit into that. So this example I'm gonna use comes from a real ServiceTitan user by the name of Courtney. Courtney, thank you so much for allowing me to use you as an example in this video. So Courtney works with a company that does septic systems. And for septic installs and repairs, there's a really large number of potential line items. So there's tanks in different sizes, there's risers, there's lids, there's pumps, there's distribution boxes, there's evacuation, backfill, haul off, and permits, and all of this stuff, right? So the problem that Courtney was facing was that it would take a really long time to train up a salesperson because they needed an intimate understanding of like what to use, what to put on the estimate in what scenario. So her problem wasn't necessarily calculating quantities, it was more just selection and consistency of items. So maybe sales reps were like guessing which lid or riser or access cover to add. They were adding the wrong SKU in the wrong size or just missing items entirely, right? So let's take a look at how she's using spec-based templates. So we're in her spec-based templates here. She's only got 2. And we'll take a look at her default spec-based estimate template here. We'll say edit. So she has this tied to this form right here, pumping septic tank observation form. And then for her proposal type, she's not generating multiple estimates like a good, better, best. She's not generating a menu. She's only generating one estimate. So basically this form is just serving as an alternate, easier way for the salesperson to build the estimate. Okay, next. And now here's all of her services and materials that could potentially end up on these estimates. So this is the problem that it's solving for her, right? There's like a lot of stuff here, and it would be a lot for the salesperson to understand when and in what scenario to use all of this stuff. So all I have to do now is just fill out the form accurately, and all of that's taken care of. Now, something I want to point out here is that the way she's using this, her formulas aren't really doing any math. Her formulas are just the thing. So this is just like the form entity. And if the form entity is true, then add that thing to the estimate. So let's look at how this actually works. So I'll do one from the office side this time, just to show you how that looks from the office. So I'm on a job here, and if I wanted to create a spec-based estimate template from the office, I would come down to job actions. I would say add an estimate. And then one of my tabs here is spec-based template. So I'll choose this and say next, and then it's going to open up the associated form. Okay, so we've got some job details up here that are auto-filled, and then she has a section just asking for some pictures, and we can start filling out the form. We'll see that she has conditional logic in this form, so depending on what I pick here, different questions show themselves or hide themselves. So we've got a question here, dividing wall observation. If wall is in place and secure, nothing happens. But if I say, for example, wall has fallen towards inlet, the way she's using this is that this is basically just alerting me, the salesperson, that we need a custom quote. We need a dividing wall custom quote, so I'm supposed to enter 1 into this box. So in this scenario, the way she's using it is kind of like using binary code, kind of like, so like 0 would be no and 1 would be yes. But it would always be no if I didn't select this, because that question just doesn't show up. But if I select something else where we need a custom quote, I'm getting this message, we need a custom quote. And that tells me, okay, I need to put a 1 in that box so that it populates properly on the estimate. Here's another question here, inlet baffle observation. If I select present, nothing happens. But if I say missing, not visible in tank, then I get this box where I can input my specific inlet baffle replacement recommendation. So if I choose this here, IBX reachable within 1.5 inches, then I get this field for IBX reachable, and then I can put a 1 there. So IBX reachable is the service that now is going to be added to the estimate, right? So IBX reachable, and the formula is just IBX reachable. So that form question now has a value of 1, so it's going to show up on the estimate. Similar thing down here, we've got a question for, is machine excavator needed? If I say yes, this shows up. Mini excavator is needed, I can just put a 1. So mini excavator is needed is mapped here, so that's going to cause this service to appear on the estimate. All right, so I've got my form filled out, I can say save. And now we can see over here I have 1 open estimate, so we can click into that. And then there are all of the services added according to how I answered the form questions. Okay, so that's how Courtney is using it. It's a little bit different than how somebody in roofing might use it, where somebody in roofing is like putting in more complex formulas to calculate the quantity needed of particular items. She's just basically using it to say, hey, do we need this item on the estimate or not? She's using it so that the person out in the field doesn't need quite as much technical knowledge to build the correct estimate that's right for the customer. They just need to be able to fill out the form and answer the questions correctly. So that's one example of how somebody outside of roofing is using it, and maybe that gets your wheels turning a little bit. Like I said, anybody is welcome to this feature. It's not like you have to be in roofing to have it. Anybody can have it. It's just that it's not going to be on by default for you if you're not in roofing. Anyways, that's all I got for today. Be sure to hit like if you liked this video and found it valuable. Be sure to subscribe to ServiceTitan's YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. Hit that bell icon so that YouTube notifies you anytime we upload a new video. Appreciate it. Peace.